This is Minda Wilson with Urgent Care. I'm excited today to talk about a lot of things that Florence Ann Romano has been involved in. She's a philanthropist, a nanny. She's involved in children's care. I mean, a woman of many talents. Florence, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. What a beautiful introduction. I thank you for that as well.
So how did you start nannying? I mean, that's sort of an interesting occupation to take up when you're so young.
Well, goodness, I started at 11 as a mother's helper because I really loved children. I was one of those little girls that went to the toy store and said I wanted to pick out my baby at the hospital. That's what I used to say to my mom. And then we'd come home and I'd make birth certificates for the babies. So I have always been a kid person, to say the least. So at 11, I started shadowing different moms in the community to be a mommy's helper. And that led me to be a babysitter like most young girls do, and then become a nanny. And it just was a natural fit for me because of how much I love children and also how exciting that world was for me, because you learn so much from children and learn about yourself in the process as well. And that really has shaped a lot of the things that I've done in my life. I really can cite it back to my nanny days.
So do you have so when you took your first job as a nanny, you go into a strange home, you don't really know the people, you're just starting to get to know them. I mean, and then how does that work? What do you develop relationships with the family? I'm not, my only sense of it is the movies, seeing that relationship in the movies.
It's a combination, because I worked for some families that I knew, family friends of ours and their children. So that's helpful when you have that kind of existing relationship. But for the families that I did not know and was hired, yes, you do start to develop a relationship with the family. I actually recommend you develop a relationship with the parents and the children and become part of the family, because that's going to be the best case scenario for you, the nanny, and the family, that you are a unit, because you're going to be an extension of the parents, an extension of their eyes, ears, and heart, is what I always say. So you do want to take the time to make sure that you're properly onboarded with that family and that there is a mutual dynamic that exists.
So if someone's going to bring on someone to help take care of their children, what do you recommend as guidelines for sort of setting up this relationship when they start?
I always say that you need to approach it from a place of values. And people get all nervous when I say that sometimes, thinking that I'm talking about religion. And I'm not. I'm talking about what is important to you and your family, what makes your home tick. What are the rules of your home, the rules of your heart and your family? So when you are interviewing a potential nanny, you have to ask yourself some questions that may not be top of mind to you, but let's talk about religion. Is religion important to you? Will the nanny have to be a certain religion? Will your nanny be required to take your children to mass or be discussing religion with them? What about politics? Do you want the nanny talking about politics with your children? What about education? Do you want your nanny to be a former teacher? Or is your nanny going to be required to educate the children to a certain degree? What is your opinion of discipline? Will a nanny be disciplining your children? If so, do you believe in corporal punishment, or do you just want them to be able to have the power to ground them or to take away technology? There are so many questions you have to ask yourself about what you are going to allow the nanny to do and what not to do, and what is going to be an extension of the values of your family.
And you're saying that it has to be consistent, so that whatever you practice in your home when she's not there, you have to have her practice when she is there. Is that right?
Consistency is important for children. Routine is important for children. You don't want the children getting away with everything with the nanny, and then when the nanny leaves and you're in charge of them again, everything's a free-for-all. I mean, you want to actually establish some rules in the home so it makes everything more harmonious. And yes, they will maybe get away with a few things here and there with the nanny instead of the parents, because that's just the way it is when it's not your parents. but you do want to make sure that that person is going to be an extension of you in the home and providing you peace of mind when you're not there. That's the number one reason you have a nanny in the first place, is so you have the peace of mind and the warmth in your heart that you are leaving your children with the best alternative to yourself.
So when you have these two sort of separate disciplinarians acting and parenting units acting as one, how do you think the best way to respond to, how do you coordinate response when something happens with the child? Like, let's say my son is sent home from school because he behaved badly, and you're at work and the nanny's in charge. How do you respond to that kind of thing?
You need to be on the same page, first of all. So when something does happen like that, you are going to want to discuss it with the nanny when you come home or on the phone or wherever you are, to make sure that whatever repercussions are going to happen from the disciplinary experience, that either the nanny is going to carry it out or you, the parents, are going to carry it out, and you are both aware of who's in charge of that. But some families do have the nanny disciplining. So it could be in this scenario that you're illustrating, that the child is sent home and that you call the parent, the nanny calls the parent and says what happened, or if the parent already knows and then calls the nanny and says you have to go pick up the child because they're going to be sent home, you need to use that time to discuss what's going to happen. It might be that you say take their iPad away from them, or they don't get to watch any TV, and I'll deal with them when they come home. Or they may say, just don't do anything until I get home and I'll deal with it. But it is something that needs to be discussed between you and the nanny so they know what to do in the moment.
Now, you've been around a lot of kids, so you have some experience and some suggestions for new parents as to some of the things that they might want to incorporate into their child raising. So what are some of those tips that you have?
If you're a new parent and you're worried about hiring someone to come in and take care of your child in your absence and you feel guilty about it, the first thing I want to tell you, the first tip is not to be afraid of that. Don't feel guilty. You have to think of babysitters or nannies or caretakers or even daycare as someone in your child's life that is there to love them in your absence. But beyond that, think of them as an aunt or an uncle, because we have male nannies now too. An aunt or an uncle or a godparent in this child's life. The best thing you can do is surround your child with as much love as possible. And that's what these nannies and caretakers can be in these children's lives and should be in their lives. So give them the opportunity to have someone outside of maybe the immediate family come in and love them and be a role model for them.
Yeah, I think that's true. And one of the things you talk about is, being thoughtful in how you respond to situations. So, you don't want to react, when you've been brought this person in, you might want to be thoughtful in how you take care of your child, how you transition them to the new person. You had some other thoughts as well about what the best way for a new parent to relate, might want to learn in terms of not just bringing in a nanny, but in raising the child themselves. I mean, you had some...
Right. In raising the child yourself, yes. I mean, depending on the age of the child, you are going to be faced with a lot of different challenges. And one of the hardest things for parents to do and nannies to do is discipline. And I find this very often. I most recently had a conversation with a family that was having trouble with their children and disciplining them. And what I suggest to the parents is that you have to respond instead of react. And what I mean by that is you have to look at the situation in front of you with the child, and instead of letting your emotions get ahead of you and get the best of you, try to think about how you can communicate your feelings to the child in a constructive way. So, for example, if your child is in public and they are throwing a tantrum, I see a lot of parents now don't even address it, and it drives me crazy because children should not be allowed to be running around doing whatever they want and yelling and screaming. That's not how you communicate your feelings. You need to address it in front of other people in public, and if it embarrasses the child, So what? They're going to remember that moment. It might stop them from doing it in the future. But if you're at home, for example, and you walk in and find that your child has drawn all over the walls with crayon and you're about to lose your mind, I understand the reason why you would, but we ask our children to count to 10 before they say something. So we actually need to do the same thing. The best case scenario there is to walk in, see it, and say to your child, this is unacceptable, this is wrong, and then say, I'm going to walk away, and I'm going to come back here in 2 minutes, and I'm going to tell you what your punishment is. Oh, your kid's going to be shaking in their boots for those 2 minutes that you walk away, because the worst thing is for them to anticipate punishment. But it's going to give you, the parent, the time to figure out what's the right way to address this and not let your emotions get the best of you. Because when you yell and scream, your children are going to think that that's the proper way that you communicate your feelings. And then they grow up and they think yelling and screaming is the way to get something accomplished. And you need to teach them that they need to find their emotional words and be able to communicate that in a constructive and professional adult way eventually.
So now, one of the things you talk about, you have a wonderful book called Nanny and Me that helps children understand what's happening when they bring a nanny into the home. And can you tell me a little bit about that book?
When I was a nanny, there was really nothing that existed in children's literature to help them understand why they had a nanny or why a nanny was coming into their lives. So I wrote my book, Nanny and Me, based on my experiences as a former nanny, but told from the child's perspective to help children have something relatable in that moment. So parents have been using it as a tool to communicate the transition that's about to happen in their household. And it helps the child understand why this is happening. You wouldn't believe how many children have a lot of emotion, feelings about having a nanny coming into their home. If they're really small, they don't know newborns, but when they're older, they're comparing themselves to people in school, wondering, hey, my mom's friend stays home or my dad's friend stays home, and why doesn't my mom or dad, neither of them, stay home? Does that mean they don't love me? They don't want to take care of me? They don't want to have fun with me? So there are questions children ask themselves, and that's why this book, I wrote this book to help children understand this is an exciting time in their life, and their parents are doing this to give them more love in their life and more memories and fun. So it was a joy to write, and I love seeing people give it to their friends at baby showers. That's probably my favorite thing to see.
That's a great idea, because a lot of changes are going to be happening in people's lives at that time, and they have to think about things like going back to work or how they're going to structure their family relationships once they do go back to work. I mean, that's fantastic. Now, I also understand you're involved in philanthropic work. So can you tell me a little bit about that?
Philanthropy has always been very important to me. My brother, 17 months younger than myself, is autistic, and several years ago now, I started a board for young professionals for autism, to bring light to autism awareness. And so I ran that for many years, and then after that was up and running, I now have transitioned into being on the board of directors for the Children's Research Fund at Lurie's Children's Hospital here in Chicago. And that has a very special place in my heart because we are directly helping the research for children that is saving lives every day. And the amazing medical innovations that are happening are just astounding and give you goosebumps. So philanthropy has always been very important to me, and giving back to children in many different capacities.
So parents, many parents now have children that are impacted or suffering from autism. So what recommendations do you have for them?
There's so much support today, so many different organizations and companies and nonprofits that are helping parents with children with autism. And when my brother was diagnosed, all those years ago, there really wasn't anything available. And autism is so common now, unfortunately, that the positive side of it is so many people can rally together in this and help one another through it. But the most important thing is to understand, if you know one child with autism, you know one child with autism. And what I mean by that is every autistic child or adult is different and their needs are different. So finding the resources to help you is the best thing you're going to be able to do to help your child. It takes a lot of people to help you with a child with special needs. And especially if you're going to have a babysitter or a nanny in the home taking care of a child with special needs, that nanny or caretaker is going to have certain certifications and certain requirements in order to take care of that child. But Clearbrook in Chicago is a great resource for those with autism. There are many other places, and I'm happy to discuss any of that with anyone out there. If they ever wanted to use me as a resource, I'd be happy to.
And so what about siblings though? I mean, you're a happy-go-lucky child. Your parents have a child with autism. I mean, what's your advice for sort of helping this sibling cope with their brother or sister that has autism?
Well, I'm the oldest of four. Like I said, my brother is directly under me, and then I have two sisters. And growing up with my brother, with Michael, I never remember my parents having a conversation with me saying Michael was autistic. He was just my brother. He was able to do things that I could do, and there were other things he couldn't do, and things he could do that I couldn't do. I mean, he could say the alphabet way before I could, and that was a little concerning, I think, when we're 17 months apart. But he was so special. But when you grow up with a child or a sibling with special needs, it makes you a much more compassionate and tolerant person, I have to say. So for the parents out there, for my recommendation for your children who are growing up alongside a child with special needs, it's the best thing in the world for them because they look at the world differently. They are kinder people because they have a sibling that needs special attention. It makes them more compassionate in the world. In the world today, we can use a lot more of that, a lot more of compassion and tolerance and understanding. And so it's a blessing. It really is a blessing in disguise. You're going to have your hard days, but my family does everything with laughter, truthfully, and that's what gets you through it.
So what you're trying to say, from my point of view, is that it's an opportunity for parents to teach compassion to their children and to, learn to laugh at difficult situations. But also when someone from the outside starts bullying or hurting your brother, you can also teach other skills in terms of coping and also educating people. And how would you recommend they do that? Mm-hmm.
It's communication. It's open communication with your children about the proper way to address issues. Like, for example, when I have witnessed my brother being bullied, and thankfully he's low functioning on the autism spectrum, so he doesn't really know if someone is, but we most certainly do. And even at almost 31 years old, he still has these moments where people will say things, and we'll hear them say things. And of course, you just want to fly off the handle and just attack them. But you do learn how to have a constructive conversation with someone about bullying or about not being accepting of differences. And I remember that I had seen a bunch of boys in a pool take my brother's animals from him. He has these little stuffed animals that he takes everywhere he goes. And I walked up to those boys, and I was only about 16 at the time. And I said to them, I feel really bad that you, to make yourself feel better about yourself, have to pick on someone that's autistic, someone that has special needs. I said, I really feel bad that that's the person you are. And as soon as I said that, they got all sheepish and they left and all of that. And I told my mom what I said. And she said she was very proud of how I handled that because it was such a mature response. Instead of me yelling and using profanity or all that, I really got to the heart of it. So you do learn how to stand up for your siblings or anyone that you love in a situation that is hurtful, but make your point known and kind of really hit them where it hurts.
So I'm sure you've seen a lot of bullying. It's a very poignant topic today. And
Right.
Maybe how do you suggest parents help a child that's being bullied sort of deal with that?
It's so hard because the spectrum of bullying is so varied, and I hate that we live in a world today that's like that. But reminding children, especially typical children, not speaking about children with special needs, typical children who are being bullied in school, is it doesn't last forever. School doesn't last forever, and it's so hard to see beyond that. It's so hard to see those years ever end, and every day can be a struggle, but reminding them that this is not forever and that they are worth something and they are of value and beautiful and strong and all these things. You want to remind them of that. You want to get involved if you can with the teacher or the school or with another parent. If it's a child that is bullying, you can get involved with the parent. There are many ways you can try to get involved to stop the bullying. But at the same time, as much as you can do, you also can't always solve it or stop it. And that's why it's important that the child can talk to you, the parent, or at least be talking to someone they love and trust about their feelings, and that they are exposed to a support system in some way, shape, or form so that they can get through it. I wish that there was a way for us to eradicate bullying at all. But we're seeing strides there today with, different videos I see about people standing up for, kids and not letting any kids eat lunch alone at school or, just rallying with each other. That's a beautiful thing to see. And like I said, if we could eradicate it, that would be great. But the most important thing you can do is have an open relationship, open communication with your child so that they don't feel alone, and especially not isolated at home.
Sometimes parents aren't aware, that their children aren't being bullied. The children are ashamed and they don't want to tell their parents. Any thoughts as to how you can sort of check in, tune in to see what's going on with your child if they get a little more sullen, a little more withdrawn?
That's a great time to not force them to talk to you, because there's nothing worse than trying to get a kid to talk to you, but starting to spend a little more time with your child perhaps, or you sharing some stories about your life in moments that were hard, moments you felt bullied or felt hurt, and share that so that maybe they kind of let down that wall and will share something with you. Or if they have friends that are willing to talk to you, you can always have a conversation with their friends. I know that sounds a little strange, a little unorthodox, but if they have a close-knit group of friends where they could communicate to you, hey, Mrs. So-and-so, Mr. So-and-so, this is what's going on, then at least you have the information to go back and try to have a conversation, but not rat out the friend, but at least bring you up to speed on what's going on. So depending on the age of the child, you could do something like that. But starting from a young age, making sure your child knows that they can trust you above anyone else or can talk to you about anything, that is the utmost importance.
So you've offered your help for people that are coping with parenting issues. What is the best way for someone to get a hold of you, to reach out to you?
My website, windycitynanny.com. You can email me right there, and I get back to anyone who reaches out to me as quickly as I possibly can. And you can also purchase my book there, or Amazon, Barnes & Noble, any of those places as well.
Well, I really want to thank you so much for your time today. It's been a pleasure getting to know you, and I look forward to more discussions on parenting.
Pleasure to meet you too.
This is Minda Wilson for Urgent Care. We'll catch you next time.
You go to the doctor and get a diagnosis you didn't expect and you don't understand. If you're like so many of us, your first move is to search the internet for information on your condition. Wouldn't it be great if you could get real information? That's where MedAdvisor comes in, a completely free website that delivers the most up-to-date information from doctors, hospitals, researchers, and clinical trials worldwide. MedAdvisor is free, private, and personalized information about your specific medical condition. It's literally as simple as going to medivizor.com and signing up for free. MedAdvisor is free, easy to use, and saves you hours searching for information you can't find on your own. MedAdvisor is a private, personalized, and HIPAA-compliant resource. MedAdvisor, improving the lives of people with serious or chronic medical conditions and those who care for them. Your personalized medical information is a simple click away at medadvisor.com. medivizor.com.
The first step towards helping someone with a hearing loss is to help them overcome denial. An important step is to stop enabling the hard of hearing person. This means stop being their ears for them, repeating what others are saying or what is spoken on television more loudly for them. The longer someone with hearing loss is able to depend on another person for communication, the longer it can take them to come out of denial and seek medical help. Seniors in particular tend to passively accept their hearing loss as a natural part of aging. Be supportive and offer to help them find simple, affordable, and yes, even cool solutions and lots of great information from Clear Sounds. Visit www.clearsounds.com to learn more. Use coupon code RADIO at checkout and we'll take 20% off your order, and every order is only $3.95 to ship. That's clearsounds.com, CLEARSOUNDS.com.
On TV, I played a funny character who lived at home with his parents and couldn't keep a job. But what isn't funny at all is when a veteran who's just returned to civilian life can't find a job. The education and training they received in the military make them an asset to any business. So if you're an employer or in a position to hire, the Coalition to Salute America's Heroes is asking you to think of our veterans and to hire smart and bet on a vet. To learn more, call 1-888-44-SALUTE or visit saluteheroes.org.